when you're in a fight or flight mode. So when you're speaking, you're feeling that way because the reason why we have fear of speaking is it's an evolved survival mechanism where we've developed the sense that when we fit into the pack, we're going to survive. When we're not fitting into the pack, we're going to die because we're not going to be accepted into the cave and into the pack and all this. So public speaking is putting yourself in the crosshairs of being rejected by the tribe, and that is a very dangerous thing. So it's almost like we're being attacked by an animal. So in our mind, it's like, this is why time gets really weird. And so like a half a second pause can feel like I paused forever.
That's interesting.
So I noticed when I watched my video last night from yesterday, when I lost my train of thought or my words, instead of just pausing, I let it be known. You know, I laughed, kind of had that laugh about myself, or you know, like, crap, I can't think of my words. I mean, basically, I made it known that I was lost in my words.
Yes.
Instead of just pausing, you know, maybe turning, whatever, facing, you know, looking somewhere else to gather my thought, and I would have been okay.
Yeah.
But instead, I let it be known that.
I see people just like maybe take a second and say, "I'm gonna grab some water."
Exactly.
You
That's
know? And even if you're pausing for what feels like a really uncomfortable amount of time for the audience, but like, okay, she's pausing. Like, you'll probably get that you're thinking of something, but it doesn't look terribly unprofessional.
Yeah. And you can actually practice things that you want to say when you mess up. Like, oh, I guess that water was actually vodka or something like that. Or one thing I really like, I heard it once and I'm like, I'm going to use that. And I have to use it every once in a while. When I tell a joke that falls flat, and I go, sorry guys, didn't I tell you I'm a part-time comedian? My jokes are only funny part of the time. Yeah.
That's good.
Recovery. Okay, so we are speakers, but really what we're doing is we're helping learners learn. And there are three types of learners. There are visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic learners. Visual, they need to see it. Auditory, they need to hear it. Kinesthetic, they need to do it. We tend to have a dominance and a combination. We learn all three ways, but we have a preference of one. In our society, a majority of people are visual learners. Oh, thank you, thank you. Majority of people are visual learners. They have an option between read the blog article or watch the YouTube video. They're going to watch the YouTube video. But they're going to say, show me the chart, the table of information, or show me the infographic. The infographic is like the visual expression of the information. So visual, auditory, kinesthetic is move out of my way, I got to touch it, feel it, and do stuff with it. The way kinesthetic people count, they count like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They count, they touch. They have to be touching stuff when they're explaining things to you. My wife is kinesthetic. She's a massage therapist. If I tell her about an ailment, she doesn't understand it. When she feels it, she goes, okay, I understand that. She has to feel it. You can't explain to her how to change oil on a car. She has to just change oil on the car, and now she knows how to do it. So, kinesthetic people are builders. They like to cross things off lists. They like to put stuff together. Visual learners like to draw. They like color. They like pictures. They like diagrams. They like mind maps. Auditories, tell me about it. Talk to me. Read about it. And reading, while it does use your eyes, is actually an auditory sense. Reading is yourself hearing your voice. So you can't actually read and listen to someone at the same time, because it's kind of a single channel experience. You might think you're reading and listening well at the same time, but you're probably not. Visual people will say, let me show you. Let me draw it for you. Let me show me how it works. And they'll say, I see what you're saying. Do you see what I mean? Visual. Picture this. All visual language. Auditory people tend to be able to articulate well. And by the way, the interesting thing about the spoken word is we start a sentence and we don't know how we're going to end it. We always start, we have an idea where we're going, but we're not quite sure how that sentence is going to end. articulate people are able to start that sentence and end it well, whereas non-articulate people have to practice the sentence in their head first. They say it and they go, that sounds right, and then they speak. So when you ask a question, and that tends to correlate with extrovert, introvert. Extroverts tend to think by speaking. Introverts tend to think first, then speak. So when you ask a question to the audience, the extrovert will have started talking before you're done speaking. The introvert will be sitting there, and you might think that they're spaced out, not paying attention, but they're actually going over the question a couple times, and they go, okay, I have an answer. Auditory people are able to describe complex topics. They can describe directions. Then you're going to turn left, then you're going to turn right. They can describe a recipe, step by step by step. And when an auditory person is talking to an auditory person, they understand each other. But when an auditory person is talking to a kinesthetic person about a recipe, they say, can we just like start measuring stuff and start mixing stuff and we'll figure it out? Or let's start playing the board game, I'll learn the rules as we play. Or, you know, can I watch you do it? That's a visual. Let me explain it to you as an auditory thing. The visual person will say, let me show you. Kinesthetic people are very good at reading body language, and they tend to be good empaths. They tend to be good empathetic because like they can feel you. They have good feel. They touch. They count on their fingers. They say, "How do you feel about this? What do you feel like we should do? How do you feel about it? I feel like we should do this." Feel. Kinesthetic. So, how should you present your content? Auditory, visual, or kinesthetic? The answer is all three.
Yes.
Yes, all three. Because we don't know who the audience is, we're not going to poll them on the way in to the room, and everybody's a combination of all three. So as you're thinking about your talk, saying, am I giving an auditory experience by explaining things? Am I giving a visual experience by showing things? And even if you don't have a prop or a PowerPoint, which are the two main ways of showing something, you can give a visual experience with words. So imagine you're on the beach, reclined with your pina colada, with the little umbrella sticking out of the pineapple. You hear the waves. That's giving a visual experience with words. You can also put a picture of a beach on the screen. Use a mix of all three modes for the most effective presentation. Now, miscommunication is actually more common than true communication. True communication is when we have actually understood each other. And the source of most conflict is when we think we've communicated, but in fact, you've understood one thing and I've understood another. And in fact, if I ask you the question, do you understand? You might say yes, but what that really means is that you think you understand. But I don't know that you actually understand what I said. Or maybe you don't think you understand, but you're embarrassed by the idea that you might not understand. So I say, do you understand? People go, yeah, right? Or I'll say, any questions? No? Okay. When you say any questions, it's 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is a very uncomfortable, very long silence. But if I say, are there any questions? A question will come up.
Does it
right?
help to gesture at the audience?
Right.
Does it help to gesture at the audience if you're trying to list questions?
No, I'm not understanding what you're saying.
I'm saying,
Give them
when you
time.
ask a question, give them time. If you don't give them time, I see this all the time. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Right? Any questions? No? Great. Right? But what I'm suggesting is that you say any questions and you hold out for a long time. Because people are formulating their questions, right?
Okay, got it.
They don't know what the question is because they've been paying attention. They're trying to think, how do I ask the question? They might even be judging themselves and saying, is this a dumb question? So they're going through all that, and you just got to give them time.
They've got to their courage to
Or
ask
they
the
don't,
question.
or they don't want to be that person who says it first. You know, like I want to be respectful of other people's questions, and I don't want to be like, move aside, here's my question, you
The
know?
last two
Sometimes.
talks that I gave, it was so uncomfortable at the end, and it shouldn't have been, because I'm grateful that everybody didn't just like stand up and run out the door, but at the end when I asked, are there any questions? It was silent, but everybody just sat there. I gave it time, and somebody would raise their hand for a question. After that question, are there any more questions? But people didn't get up. They didn't want to get up. It was like they were just thinking about everything that I had just gone through. And
Yeah.
which was a good feeling on one hand, because people weren't like ready to run out the door, but after the last time, it was like they were still sitting there. It's like, well, we can just mingle. It's like, how do you, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, how long do you let them, I mean, it was
Longer than you
long
think.
time. Yeah,
Longer
it was
than
a
you
long
think.
time.
Sounds like you were probably doing well.
I gave them pretty much.
I'm gonna put a bookmark in the questions, because I have a little best practices around handling
Okay.
questions and
Okay.
how to get
Oh, good.
questions going. First, I want to tell you about how they invented the internet. They invented the internet when they had two modems, and they called it Modem 1 and Modem 2. And they said, how do we develop this protocol where we can transfer data from Modem 1 to Modem 2 and know for sure that it has arrived uncorrupted? So they came up with this protocol where they break the file down into little chunks. And Modem 1 will send a little chunk to Modem 2, and then Modem 2's protocol is to send a message to Modem 1 saying, I have received a message from you, Modem 1. This is what I have received from you, Modem 1. Does this match what you sent to me? Then Modem 1 sends a confirmation message saying you have received the full package. Then Modem 1 sends another package, and Modem 2 says, Modem 1, I have received another package from you. Does this match what you sent? And Modem 1 will say, oh, no, the file has been corrupted. Let me resend it to you. So they send it another time, and then Modem 2 says, I've received a new file. This is matching what you sent. Modem 1 says, that matches what I sent. You have received the full package. And it continues to do this, confirming what was received, and so then we know all the data was transferred. And that, boys and girls, is how the internet works. So, this is how communication works between person 1 and person 2. When the communication is actually working, person 1 says, hey, you want to meet me at the restaurant at 5 o'clock? Are we meeting at the Mexican restaurant? Yes, Mexican restaurant. 5 o'clock a.m. or p.m.? 5 p.m. Great. Meet you there? I'll meet you there. Perfect. Right? Instead of, let's meet at the restaurant at 5 o'clock. Okay. Uh-oh. What restaurant? 5 o'clock a.m., 5 o'clock p.m. Front of the restaurant? Back, where, So, confirming that the information has been received. Now, when we're in a keynote setting, large audience, one-way presentation. The feedback we're getting is smiling and nodding. When people are on their phones, the feedback is, you're not more interesting than their phone. And we're competing with some pretty snazzy technology here, but we need to be more interesting. Not angry, like, guys, I see your phones. That's like the angry teacher saying, come on, quit passing the note. I take full responsibility to elevate my level of interestingness, that I'm more interesting than they're, more interesting, more relevant. If you're going to remember one thing, remember this. That gets all the snoozers to go, oh, okay, I've got to pay attention now, right? Now write this one down. This is a writer-downer. Ready? I will sprinkle those throughout the presentation so we snap people back. You guys still with me? Right? That kind of stuff. Bring them back. That's the feedback we get in a keynote setting. In a training setting, it's more of a conversation. So we say, who can tell me how the internet works? Or, so who can tell me, who can explain this concept to me back in your language? Right? And then when I hear you say it, I can know for sure that you understood. In fact, this is the practice of active listening, is when you're listening to one person, not waiting to talk. Most listening is actually just waiting to talk. But active listening is waiting to then reflect back to them. So this is what I'm hearing you say. Did I hear you correctly? And then they can say yes or no. yes, you received the file entirely, or no, actually, that's not exactly what I sent here, let me resend it to you. Sales conversations are all about active listening. Now, if I told you you're about to walk into a room, and if you listen well enough to the point where they feel heard and understood, more heard and understood than they hardly ever feel, if you can get them to feel heard and understood, they'll give you $10,000. If I told you that was the game, you're about to walk into that room, do you think you would be a better listener? And this is the game that we're playing in sales, is we're listening really well. And the litmus test of how well we're listening is when we ask them, do you feel heard and understood? Feel heard and understood. And the way we achieve that feeling is we say back to them, this is what I'm hearing you say. Is that what you're saying? And when you can explain to them their challenges better than they explained it to you, they will assume you're the expert. When you explain to them their challenges better than they explained it to you. So in Beverly's situation, the lawyer's there going, I've got this client loan, I got these annoying clients, and I've been dealing with some issues at home, and I'm really not loving my work, and I just don't think I can take it anymore. I feel tired, I don't get to sleep anymore, I'm drinking every night. And then Beverly says, so it sounds like you're on a path to burnout, is that right? And they go, yes, that's what's happening. Because you just summarized and explained to them with the tone and with the sense of like, I see this all the time. Been there myself, I see it all the time, don't worry, we got this. And it's like you explain to them, so it sounds like this is what's happening, and they go, ah, yeah, that's what I meant to say in shorter words. Yeah.
Majeed, you just saved my life.
Good. What happened?
Avoid the path to burnout. So that's like that's the keys to the kingdom right there.
Good.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Avoid the path.
The
to
divorced supermom.
Yep.
Avoid the path to burnout.
Yep.
Good. So, how do we avoid miscommunication? We want to be easily understood, and even better than easily understood, we want to be impossible to misunderstand. How do we do that? First of all, we must know that misunderstanding is the rule, and understanding is the exception to the rule. Occasionally understanding happens, but usually it's a misunderstanding. So we want to say the same thing in 3 different ways. Say the same thing in 3 different ways. Say it once, say it again, and then say it one more time.
Can you give an example?
I just did. Yeah.
Is that?
Well, I said, say the same thing in 3 different ways. Then I said, say it once, then say it again, and say it one more time. That's me saying the same thing in a different way.
Okay.
It's very meta.
Give me one more example.
Yeah. So it's like, you'd say, most people are unprepared for a funeral.
Okay.
I had someone come to my office the other day, filling out the paperwork. He didn't know his mother's middle name. I've had people coming to me saying they don't know if they want their mother cremated, buried, not buried. And I just said the same thing 3 different ways, which is people are unprepared for funeral. Here's an example of that, and here's an example of that.
Okay, got it.
Right? So each thing I'm saying is people are unprepared for funerals.
Okay, got
right?
it.
And in fact, a good speech has one main idea, and everything is being reinforcing that idea.
Okay.
And for you, Valerie, I think the message is almost everybody is unprepared, and if you love your family, you'll get prepared. That's the core of your whole message.
Okay.
And all of the stories that you tell around that are driving back to that one message. You have other messages like people spend too much money at funerals. You have other messages like it's important to honor the specific memories of the person. Those are other elements. But the one core message that you want people leaving with is almost everybody's unprepared, and I love my family and I want to get them prepared.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Say it logically so people say that makes sense. Say it emotionally, so people say, that feels right. Say it physically, so people say, I get it, I understand it, I see how that works.
Okay.
Your words are vocal cords vibrating against air molecules that are vibrating adjacent air molecules that are dominoing into other air molecules that are then vibrating your eardrums, sending electrical signals to your brain. You then miraculously determine the meaning of those vibrations with language. It is a miracle every time we communicate. And yet, through those filters, we often miscommunicate. So, what are filters? Imagine you have big pink glasses. They're fused to your face, and you just think the world is always pink. And you can't actually take them off. That's what the filter is. So if you're a woman, you can't see the world as a man. If you're an American, you can't see the world as a Chinese person. You can imagine. That's called empathy, putting yourself in their shoes. So what are some of the filters? Culture, religion, life stage, new mother, divorced mother, grandmother, child, life stage, generation, year you were born, the industry that you work in, coming from public sector. Public sector people tend to be very noticing the details and risk averse. So they'll think, what are all the things that can go wrong? How do we avoid those things from happening? And how do we make sure that we don't upset anybody? Private sector people are, how do we accomplish more goals and drive harder and close more deals and move fast and that kind of stuff. So maybe that's my experience and interpretation of those worlds, right? Small business versus big business. Startup versus established enterprise. City versus rural. Churchgoer versus non-churchgoer, right? So when you have your audience, you want to speak in a way that gets through their filters. When I have an audience that I know to be on the religious side, I'll use the word blessed more often. But if I think that religious words are going to turn the audience off, I'll use the word fortunate. I'm very fortunate to have this great family. I'm very blessed to have this great family. Subtle difference, but we want to create the idea that like, oh, I like them because they're like me. So that's how we get through the filters. So be aware of the filters. What kind of filters are your audiences going to be thinking through?
How are senior citizens more challenging than other groups? They scare me a little going into that. Because I think of my mom and dad sitting there and not laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had old school parents that I don't think I ever heard my mom laugh in her lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm imagining a room
They're
full
more
of...
serious, and there are many topics that they would never talk about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be, the first time I have a room full of senior citizens will be a first.
Mm-hmm. So let's also be aware of the assumptions we make. If we say senior people are difficult people, then we kind of tend to see the world through our own assumptions as well. It's like the story of a blacksmith who's working on his horseshoes, and a guy comes in on a horse, and he says to the people, "What are the people like in this town?" And the blacksmith says to the guy on the horse, he says, "You just coming from the other town?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "How'd you find the people in that town?" He said, "I found them rude. I found them not very nice people. I found they're very stingy people, not nice people." And the blacksmith says, "Well, I'm afraid to tell you, the people in this town, you're probably going to find them to be the same." And the guy on the horse said, "All right, well, thanks for letting me know." He's off. A couple minutes later, guy on the horse comes. Blacksmith's working on his horseshoes, and the guy on the horse says, "Hey, how's it going?" The blacksmith says, "Good, how you doing?" He says, "Great, just came from the other town down the street. Wondering, what are the people like here?" And the blacksmith says, Well, that's an interesting question. Well, how'd you find the people in the other town? And the guy says, oh, the friendliest people, just the most lovely people, kind and generous, and just warm, fantastic. And the blacksmith says, I think you'll find the people here very much the same.
So, I don't view, I understand what you're saying, but I don't view elderly people challenging or problematic, but you're right, you have to view them, I would try and relate to them. Just, it's all about relating to your audience.
I guess it's
And
based,
put yourself in their shoes.
Mom and Dad lived in a, retirement community, and everybody was complaining all the time. And so that's my frame, and they were in a big, nice retirement home. And I mean, finally, toward the end of their lives, before they had cancer and were in hospice, I told my parents, could you just get the hell out of there? You have money. You're becoming complainers. Get out. And so Mom and Dad moved actually close to me, and their attitude changed. So I do have that frame of reference. Well, I mean, who wants me to come in to speak, but that retirement community.
It sounds like where my mom lives, and I've experienced that same thing. In fact, I've kind of mentioned a little bit about some challenges with my mom in some of the recent calls, and that's part of the reason why. It's hard to watch that with your parents.
Yeah.
What I've discovered is, and I haven't spoken to any of them as a group, but when I'm just like sitting there in a little dining room with my mom and her complaining friends come in or whatever, they'll laugh so easily. It's like they're going to complain among each other. The food's bad, the temperature's too cold, whatever. But my just very anecdotal experience is like they love it when an outsider comes in and just I say the dumbest things, and they'll laugh.
Thank you for showing me.
Yeah.
They're just looking for something different and refreshing, I think, because their days are
Yeah.
They'll be the highlight of their day. I think so.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's hard because I didn't have fun parents. We couldn't use straws, we couldn't sit in booths, they didn't laugh. We went by the rules on everything. So then when they were in a community of complainers, I was like, oh God.
They'll be a breath of air.
So I'll tell you the very first thing I thought of when you mentioned this is my music strategy that is right to someone's heart, which is play what was #1 when they were in high school.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And that would be Elvis. Elvis, Frank Sinatra. Play what was
Great
#1
idea.
when they were in high school.
Yeah.
They're right back into the doo-wop shibop.
Sound therapy.
Like my way, Frank Sinatra.
Yes.
Do a vision board of happy elderly people, like the mom and dad that maybe you wanted to have.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the next thing is make the audience feel great about themselves. You ever hear people talking about millennials? People talk about millennials like they're brats, like they're entitled, like they're lazy. Imagine an expert on millennials speaking to an audience full of millennials. Like that. Wouldn't go over so well. Speaking to an audience of millennials, you might be like, geez, you guys are so smart. Like, I hand you a phone and you're just like running the International Space Station with it in 5 minutes. Like, I don't know how you guys do this. But if you're talking to a group of baby boomers, then it might make sense to go, millennials, they stroll in at 10 o'clock with their iced double latte mochas and their flip-flops, and they think they're working here. Whatever happened to showing up early for work and putting in a good day's work, right? And then the audience is going, yeah, like, just like us. Right, so you want the audience to feel great about who they are. So if you're coming in with, oh no, old people are difficult, right?
Yeah, no, thank you for that reality check. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right.
Oh, another great quote. Effective public speaking is the transference of enthusiasm from the speaker to the audience. Nobody will be more enthusiastic about your message than you.
Yes.
And I also believe that energy dissipates over distance. Meaning that you might sense my enthusiasm here, but if I was speaking the same way 20 feet from here, it might not feel so much. I got my start in theater. And this is a safe room, so I'm okay to say this. I liked putting on the makeup. We had lipstick, we had foundation, and I had really strong wrinkle lines, right? Smile lines, wrinkle lines with like the brown eyeliner, like I was drawing. And when you get close to someone who's on stage, you're like, whoa! That makeup is really intense. But from a distance, it just looks normal. When you gesture confused, if we're on TV, TV can zoom in right here and I can show you confused like this. That's confused. But if I'm on stage, confused is, right? Or I don't know where Johnny is. On TV it might be like, where's Johnny? But on stage it's, where is Johnny? Right? So bigger gestures, bigger enthusiasm, the more of the distance we have. Transference of enthusiasm. Be big. The presenter is the visual aid. Don't, and for those of you who can really put together a beautiful PowerPoint, don't make your PowerPoint more interesting than you, right? Because then what ends up happening is you're so pleased with the PowerPoint, you turn and you look at the PowerPoint, you're kind of joining the audience. That's awesome. Watch this one. Oh, I got this animation. Everyone watch this. Click that, right? So ideally, for slides, they see the slide, and then they come back to you. They see the slide, and then they come back to you. Whether you're using PowerPoint or Keynote, when you press the letter B, the screen goes black.
Awesome, thank you.
When you press the letter W, the screen goes white. W for white, B for black. What you should not do is place something in front of the projector. Those bulbs burn very hot. I had a lady with an iPad and a plastic iPad case around her iPad, put it in front of the screen because she wanted to create this effect. To create this effect means, okay, now pay attention to me, which we all were paying attention to her until the room started smelling like sort of plastic.
Oh my gosh.
What is that? Right? And then there's like this big black mark on the iPad case. So press the letter B to make the screen black, letter W to make the screen white.
Can you still
That's
see the
awesome.
side things if you're in that presentation mode? Because again, I use the photos as my cue. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't normally have that presentation mode, so I'm going to say I don't know.
Okay. I'll check it out.
I don't have the presenter mode?
On Keynote,
Oh, I don't, yeah, maybe I don't, maybe it doesn't.
Do you use Keynote more than PowerPoint?
I do.
And why is that?
Because I made a pact with Apple that I would never do anything but do Apple stuff. That's one reason. Another reason is...
Is that true?
I've gone to all into Apple, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All in. A number of reasons. One is I have a cloud storage solution, meaning
Mhm.
anytime I make any change, it's automatically
Mhm.
saved. So if I lose my computer, I can get on your computer and run everything seamlessly, any other computer.
Right.
Same thing for my phone, tablet.
Mhm.
So it's a preference. I think that Microsoft PowerPoint can do that as well. Has a app for your phone and has an app for your
Mhm.
iPad. So it's just a preference.
Oh, okay.
And I probably only use 1% of the power of Keynote.